I'm still trying to wrap my head around what happened. It's been a couple of weeks since that Christmas party, but it feels like it was just yesterday. I'm not sure where to start. So let me begin by telling you a bit about me and my wife, Emily. We've been together for almost 10 years. Married for 5. We met in college, both of us at the University of Colorado in Boulder. I thought we were the perfect couple. I'm a laid-back guy, not too outgoing, more the quiet type. Emily, on the other hand, was always the social butterfly. People loved her. She had this magnetic charm that made everyone want to be around her. Honestly, I think I fell for her because she was everything I wasn't: bold, confident, and always the center of attention. Over the years, I've grown to admire her strength. We had our ups and downs like every couple, but things seemed to be good. We bought a house in Denver, I got a stable job at a tech company, and Emily worked in marketing. Things weren't perfect, but what relationship is? Now, Christmas parties are a big deal in our circle. Our friends love to throw them. Every year it's the same drill: lots of food, games, some awkward small talk, and of course, Secret Santa. This year, the party was held at Brian and Lisa's house in Highlands Ranch, about an hour south of Denver. It wasn't the most festive location, but it was close enough for everyone to make it without much hassle. I had a weird feeling going into this year's party, though. Maybe it was just the stress of work, but I had this nagging thought that something was off. Maybe it was just my paranoia, but the whole thing felt different from the start. We arrived a little late, as usual. Emily was dressed in this red dress that fit her perfectly, and as always, she turned heads the second we walked in. I was the guy standing awkwardly in the corner with a drink in hand, while Emily instantly got swept up in conversation. She was laughing with a few of the other women, including Lisa and Sarah. I just nodded and smiled, trying not to feel out of place. The night went on like any other, until we got to the Secret Santa game. It's always the highlight of the night, where everyone exchanges goofy little gifts. Nothing serious, just something to break the ice. This year, we had to draw names from a hat. I pulled Sarah's name, which I thought was funny since we had joked about getting each other something ridiculous. Emily, though, was pulling names for the first time from this group, and when she drew her name, she looked around the room with a smile. She had drawn the name of a guy named Mark. Mark was Brian's college roommate, and though he was a good guy, I always felt a little uneasy around him. He was a little too charming, a little too good-looking, and had a way of making people feel special. I wouldn't say I was jealous of him, but something about the guy didn't sit right with me. The game went as it usually did, with people exchanging their small, sometimes ridiculous, gifts. Emily ended up getting a fancy bottle of wine from Mark. The way he handed it to her, too close, too familiar, left me with an odd feeling in my stomach. I didn't say anything, of course. It was just a gift exchange, right? But the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more going on between them than met the eye. Later on, after the gift exchange, the group split up for different activities. Some people were in the living room, playing a card game. Others were in the kitchen gossiping. I was sitting on the couch, nursing my third beer of the night, when Emily and Mark ended up talking by the fireplace. They were laughing, close together, and for some reason, I just couldn't look away. It wasn't just the fact that they were talking, it was the way they were talking. The way Mark was leaning in, the way Emily was laughing at everything he said like he was the funniest person in the world. My mind started to race. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe I was just paranoid, but I couldn't shake the thought that something was off. I glanced at my watch around 10 p.m. and decided to get up and grab another drink. As I walked past them, Emily caught my eye. She smiled and waved me over. I walked over, tried to play it cool. "Hey, babe, you're having a good time?" I asked. "Oh yeah, Mark and I were just talking about the holidays," she replied, her voice sounding a little too cheerful, a little too forced. "Right," I said, trying not to sound suspicious. "Well, I'm going to grab another beer. You want one?" Emily nodded, but Mark interrupted before she could answer. "I think we're good for now. Right, Emily?" She smiled at him before nodding. "Yeah, we're good. Thanks though, honey." I froze for a second. The way Mark said Emily in that intimate tone, like they shared some kind of inside joke, made my skin crawl. But I let it go, brushing it off as nothing. I headed to the kitchen, grabbed a beer, and tried to shake off the feeling that had settled in my gut. Maybe I was overreacting. After all, it's just a party, right? But the rest of the night would prove me wrong. And when I look back now, it's clear that everything started to fall apart from that moment on. I didn't know it yet, but the man my wife had exchanged a gift with, Mark, wasn't just another guy at a party. He would change everything. That night, the Christmas party I thought was just another holiday get-together turned into the beginning of the end. And looking back, I don't know how I missed it, how I didn't see the signs earlier. But I guess that's what happens when you trust someone too much. The rest of the night at the party went by in a haze. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that I was just being paranoid. It wasn't like Emily and Mark were doing anything overtly inappropriate. They were just talking, laughing, being friendly, probably just catching up after a long year. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more between them. I wasn't the type of guy to confront my wife over something like this, but the unease lingered. Around midnight, the party started to wind down. People were starting to leave, and Emily and I were getting ready to head out. As we walked toward the door, I saw Mark standing by the coat rack, talking to Brian. They were laughing, but Mark's eyes kept darting over toward Emily, and I noticed the way he looked at her, like he was checking her out, not just chatting with her as a friend. I couldn't be sure, but in that moment, I felt like I was being punched in the gut. "Ready to go?" I asked Emily, trying to sound casual. "Yeah," she said, turning to grab her coat. "I think I'm just about done here. You know, the usual, good food, good friends." I'm beat. But even though she said the words, she didn't sound tired. She sounded off, like there was something else on her mind. We said our goodbyes to Brian and Lisa, and I could see Emily exchanging a brief, almost intimate hug with Mark. It was quick, but I caught the way Mark held her a second too long. I didn't know how to explain it, but in that split second, it was like everything I'd been feeling all night clicked into place. When we got back to the car, I didn't say anything. I didn't want to make a scene, but I could feel the tension building inside me. Emily was scrolling through her phone in the passenger seat, her eyes focused on the screen. It was as if she wasn't even there, as if she were miles away. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Huh?" She looked up, blinking, as if I'd just interrupted her thoughts. "Yeah, fine. Just checking some messages." She didn't seem too invested in the conversation, and I couldn't help but feel like she was hiding something. The drive back to our place was quiet, almost uncomfortable. I kept looking at her, wondering if I should just ask her what was going on, but I didn't. I was afraid of what the answer might be. When we finally got home, Emily went straight to the bathroom. I took a shower, trying to wash off the feeling of unease that had settled deep inside me. I knew I had to confront her about what I'd seen, but part of me was terrified of what it might mean for our relationship. Later that night, as we lay in bed, Emily curled up beside me, but something was different. She wasn't as close as usual, not as affectionate. I tried to brush it off, telling myself she was just tired from the party. But when she turned away from me, facing the wall, I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in my gut anymore. Something had shifted, and I was afraid I knew exactly what it was. The next morning, I decided I'd talk to her about it. I didn't want to accuse her of anything, but I needed to know what was going on. So, I sat down at the kitchen table with my coffee, waiting for her to wake up. When Emily finally came downstairs, she looked tired, like she hadn't slept well. She gave me a half-hearted smile and sat across from me, her eyes avoiding mine. "Hey," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can we talk?" She looked up, her expression a little guarded. "About what?" "About last night," I said, trying to keep things calm. "I don't know, something felt off. With you and Mark. I don't know how to explain it, but I didn't like the way you two were acting around each other." She paused for a moment, her fingers tapping nervously on the edge of her coffee cup. "What do you mean?" Her voice was soft, but there was a nervousness there that I hadn't heard before. I looked at her, trying to read her expression. I don't know, just the way you were talking to him, the way he looked at you. It just felt too familiar, like there was something more going on. Emily's eyes widened, and for a split second, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt cross her face. But it was gone just as quickly. Are you serious? She said, laughing a little, but it was forced. You're worried about Mark? We've known him for years. I know, I said, my voice quiet. But it felt different this time, and I don't know why, but it did. Emily shook her head. You're overthinking it. Mark's just a friend. Nothing happened. I swear. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something inside me told me that she was lying. And deep down, I knew that if I didn't find out the truth, I'd never be able to let it go. The days that followed felt like I was walking on eggshells. I couldn't shake the feeling that Emily was hiding something, and it was eating away at me. I tried to push it aside, but the more I thought about it, the more certain I became that there was something going on between her and Mark. And then came the moment that would confirm everything. It was 2 days later. I was off work for the day, and Emily had gone out to run some errands. While she was gone, I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. I went through her phone. It felt like a violation, and I instantly regretted it the moment I picked it up. But as I scrolled through her messages, I came across something that made my blood run cold. It was a text from Mark, sent the night after the party. Last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about you. My heart stopped. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity. Then I found more messages, some from the weeks before the party. I can't wait to see you again. You're amazing. The texts were flirty, intimate, and worse, there was a tone of secrecy to them. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. This wasn't just a friendship. It was something more, something that I had been blind to. When Emily walked through the door later that afternoon, I was already standing there, holding her phone in my hands. Her eyes went wide when she saw what I was holding. Did you go through my messages? She asked, her voice shaky. Why didn't you tell me about this, Emily? I asked, my voice cold. Why didn't you tell me about Mark? Her face went pale. I can explain. I just shook my head. No more explanations. I've seen enough. The truth was out, and in that moment, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. The man she had been exchanging gifts with at the party wasn't just a friend, and my world had just crumbled. And that's when I realized things were about to get a whole lot worse. The air in the room was thick with tension. Emily stood frozen in the doorway, her face pale, her hands shaking. I felt numb as I stared at the phone in my hand. The messages between her and Mark were all I needed to see. The words they'd exchanged, words that were supposed to be reserved for a relationship, not for a married woman and a man who had no business being this close to her, pierced through me like a knife. I couldn't believe I was here, standing in my own living room, confronting my wife about something I never thought I'd have to. She looked like she was about to cry, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. The anger was too strong, too raw. Please, let me explain, Emily said, her voice cracking. But I could hear the desperation in her tone, and I was done. Explain what? I snapped, cutting her off. How you've been lying to me for weeks. How you've been seeing him behind my back. How long has this been going on, Emily? Huh? Since the party? Or before that? She took a step forward, and for a moment, I thought she might try to grab the phone from my hand, but I was already too far gone. I wasn't going to let her sweep this under the rug. Mark and it's nothing like you think, she said, holding her hands up as if trying to shield herself. We're just friends. It was a few flirty texts, nothing more. Don't. I interrupted, my voice rising. Don't lie to me. I'm done with the excuses. You don't send texts like that to someone you just think of as a friend. And you don't lie to your husband like this. You've been sneaking around, and I didn't even know. I didn't even see it coming. Her face twisted in guilt, but she didn't respond. I could tell she was trying to find the right words, but the truth was out there now, and there was no going back. I wasn't going to sit here and beg her to explain herself. This wasn't something that could be fixed with words anymore. The silence between us stretched, and I could feel my pulse racing. I wanted to scream, to shout, to make her feel what I was feeling. Betrayed. Devastated. I had given her everything, trusted her with everything, and she had thrown it all away. I trusted you. I muttered under my breath, shaking my head in disbelief. I never meant for it to go this far, Emily whispered, her voice shaky. I swear it wasn't like that. Stop, I said, holding my hand up. I don't want to hear it. You had every chance to come clean, to tell me what was really going on, but you didn't. Instead, you kept hiding things from me. You kept seeing him. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I wasn't sure if she was crying yet, but her eyes were glossy, her body language small, almost defeated. It didn't matter, though. Nothing she said would change what I had read on that screen. The truth was clear, and it wasn't just about a few texts. It was about the fact that she had been lying to me for weeks, maybe months, and that was something I couldn't ignore. I don't even know who you are anymore, Emily, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It felt like a punch to the gut just to say those words. But it was the truth. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I married, had been replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Someone who was capable of this betrayal. She took a shaky step forward, her hand reaching out, but I pulled away. I couldn't even look at her anymore. I'm not doing this. I'm done. The words felt heavy, like they were tearing me apart. But they were the right words. I could feel the weight of them hanging in the air. This wasn't just an argument or a temporary fight. This was the end. I'm filing for divorce, I said, the finality in my voice hanging between us like a death sentence. Her face went pale, and for a moment, I saw genuine panic in her eyes. She opened her mouth to say something, but I wasn't listening anymore. She could beg, she could apologize, she could promise me the world, but it wouldn't matter. The damage was done. My trust was shattered beyond repair. You don't mean that, Emily said, her voice breaking. We can fix this. We can. No, Emily, I said, cutting her off once more. We can't. You crossed a line that you can't come back from. I've been sitting here wondering what went wrong, thinking maybe I did something to deserve this. But I didn't. You made a choice. And now, I'm making mine. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes now, but I didn't feel any sympathy. It was too late for that. She had made her decision when she decided to lie to me, when she decided to hide her relationship with Mark from me. And now I was making mine. Please, she whispered, stepping closer again. Please don't do this. We can talk about it. I'll end things with him. I shook my head, backing away from her. No, this isn't something you can fix with words, Emily. It's done. For a long moment, we just stood there, the distance between us growing. The woman I had married was standing in front of me, but it felt like I was staring at a stranger. I had no idea who she was anymore, and maybe that was the saddest part of all. I'm going to stay with a friend for a while, I said finally, my voice steady now. I need space. I need time to think. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. She just stood there, frozen in place, staring at me like she was seeing me for the first time. But I wasn't looking at her anymore. As I grabbed my jacket and walked out the door, I could hear her calling my name behind me, but I didn't stop. There was nothing left to say. The life we had built together, everything I had thought we were, was gone. And in that moment, I realized that this wasn't just the end of our marriage. This was the end of the man I used to be. The one who trusted, who believed in love, who thought he had everything figured out. Now I was just someone else, someone who had been betrayed. And nothing could change that. It's been 2 weeks since I walked out of the house. I stayed with a friend, a guy I went to high school with, and it was probably the only thing keeping me from completely losing it. After the divorce papers were filed, I took a step back and tried to process everything, but the reality of it was suffocating. I had been blindsided. The life I thought I had was a lie. And Emily, the woman I had trusted for so long, she was now a complete stranger to me. I kept telling myself I was doing the right thing, but it didn't feel like that. Every night I would go to bed, and it would hit me all over again. The betrayal, the lies, the fact that my entire life had just unraveled. At first, I tried to keep things civil with Emily. We met a couple of times to talk, mostly about the logistics of the divorce. But each time, I could see the pain in her eyes, and I couldn't decide if I should feel sorry for her or if it was just her guilt trying to get to me. Maybe both. But the truth was, no amount of apologies or explanations would fix what she had done. She crossed a line that couldn't be undone. A few days after I moved out, I got a text from Emily. It was a long message, full of emotion and regret, asking if we could meet. Please, I'm sorry for everything. I messed up. Can we just talk one more time? I need you to understand why I did it. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the screen, trying to decide if I even wanted to hear her out. Part of me wanted closure, wanted to know what had been going through her mind when she made those choices. But the other part of me, the part that had been humiliated and hurt, wasn't sure I could handle hearing any more lies. In the end, I agreed to meet her, not for reconciliation, not for forgiveness, but because I needed to look her in the eyes and hear the truth. All of it. We met at a small coffee shop in the middle of town. It was quiet, the kind of place where you could sit and talk without worrying about being interrupted. I showed up first, sitting in a corner booth, my hands shaking slightly as I wrapped them around the mug in front of me. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Maybe for her to show up in tears, maybe for her to beg me to come back. But what I got when she walked in was not what I had imagined. Emily looked different. She looked more tired, more worn out. The makeup that used to cover her face was now barely there, and her eyes were red-rimmed, as though she hadn't been sleeping well. But even though she looked like she'd been through something, it didn't matter to me anymore. What she had done to me, what she had done to us, was unforgivable. She sat down across from me, folding her hands on the table, avoiding eye contact. "Thanks for meeting me," she said softly. "I know this is hard. I know I've hurt you more than I can ever explain." I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, my expression cold. The silence between us felt thick and uncomfortable. It was like we were two strangers sitting across from each other, pretending that everything was okay. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," Emily continued, her voice shaking. "And I know there's no excuse for what I did. I don't know what came over me. Mark and I were just talking at first, but then it turned into something more. I never meant for it to get out of hand." She was talking, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sympathy. She had already explained herself 100 times in the messages we exchanged over the past week, but none of it made the situation any clearer. None of it made it hurt less. "Why didn't you tell me, Emily?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you come to me before it went this far? Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me what was really going on?" She bit her lip, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I could control it, that it wouldn't get out of hand. But I was wrong. You think I'm going to just forgive you for that? Just because you're sorry now?" I asked, my voice rising despite myself. "You betrayed me, Emily. You went behind my back and slept with him. How am I supposed to trust you after that?" "I know," she said, her voice barely audible now. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't even deserve a chance to explain. But I swear to you, I never meant for it to hurt you like this. I thought I could keep it secret. I thought I could keep it under control." I leaned back in my seat, shaking my head. "You really think I'm supposed to believe that? That it was just a mistake, just a one-time thing that got out of hand?" Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of the woman I used to love. "It wasn't just one time," she admitted quietly. "It was a few times, but I was confused. I was feeling distant from you. And Mark was there, and he made me feel things that I thought I was missing." I stood up abruptly, the anger inside me rising like a tidal wave. "You chose him over me, Emily. You didn't just make a mistake. You made a choice every time you saw him. Every time you lied to me. You chose him. And now you expect me to sit here and act like everything's okay. I could see the pain on her face, but it didn't matter anymore. She had destroyed everything. The trust we had, the life we had built together, it was all gone. And I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. I turned to leave, but she reached out to stop me. "Please," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't leave like this. I can't lose you. I love you." But I couldn't look at her anymore. Not the same way. Not after what she had done. "I can't love you anymore," I said, my voice steady but broken. "You've already left me." And with that, I walked out of the coffee shop. And this time I didn't look back. It's been a few months since that day at the coffee shop. The divorce is finalized now, and Emily and I have gone our separate ways. There are moments when I wake up and feel the weight of it all, the weight of what she did to me, what we had, and the mess I was left to clean up. I've spent a lot of time thinking about everything, how it all fell apart, how I missed the signs, how I chose to ignore the whispers in my gut because I wanted to believe in us. I wanted to believe in the life we had built together. But the truth has a way of pushing its way to the surface, no matter how hard you try to bury it. The hurt, though, it's faded, but it's not gone. Some days it hits harder than others, and I feel the sting of betrayal all over again. It's a kind of grief that doesn't ever truly leave. It becomes part of who you are, a scar that you carry with you. And even when you think you've moved past it, there's a moment when it can rear its ugly head, catching you off guard. But that's life, I guess. It's messy. People hurt you, and you either learn from it or let it break you. At first, after everything was done, I kept asking myself why. Why didn't I see it? Why didn't I know? Why wasn't I enough? It took me a while to come to terms with the fact that none of it was about me. I couldn't have changed anything. I could have been the best husband in the world, but if Emily had made up her mind to cheat, it wouldn't have mattered. I realized I wasn't the problem. I loved her. I was loyal. I gave her everything I had. But sometimes, it's just not enough for the other person. Sometimes, they make choices that have nothing to do with you at all. I spent the first few weeks after the divorce thinking that maybe I could find closure by being around old friends. I even met up with a few of our mutual friends, the ones who'd known Emily and me as a couple. They all seemed to sympathize with me, and some of them even tried to paint Emily as the villain in this story, like they were trying to make me feel better. But the truth is their sympathy didn't fix anything. It just made it worse. It was like everyone was trying to tell me they had seen it coming, but I hadn't. I'd been blind to everything. There were a lot of whispers behind my back. People talking about how Emily had messed up, how she had destroyed something beautiful. I didn't know what to do with that. On one hand, it felt like they were validating my pain, but on the other, it just felt like I was getting pity. And pity was the last thing I needed. I needed healing, not a reminder of how broken everything had become. After some time, I found myself just sitting at home, staring at the walls. It was quiet, too quiet. It was almost suffocating, like the silence had become an echo of everything I had lost. I missed the noise, the chaos of a life with Emily. I missed how we used to laugh, how we used to argue over stupid things and then make up in the most ridiculous ways. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was the truth. And the truth was that Emily had chosen to betray me. And that was something I couldn't unsee. I tried to keep things civil with her after the divorce. We had to communicate about finances, about the house, about all the things that come with ending a marriage. But it was never easy. Every time I saw her, it was like I was reliving that moment when I found out everything. The pain was still there, lurking beneath the surface, threatening to boil over. And even though I could see she was hurting, I couldn't find it in me to feel sorry for her. She'd made her bed. Now, she had to lie in it. Then came a message. It was from Emily. Another apology. Another attempt to reach out. She wanted to meet again, to talk. She said she was sorry, that she'd been going to therapy, that she was trying to fix herself. I don't know what I expected, but when I saw it, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to hear her out. Part of me wanted to hear her explain herself, maybe to understand why she did what she did. But another part of me, the part that had been betrayed and humiliated, wasn't sure if I could take any more of her words. How could I believe anything she said anymore? But I agreed. I agreed to meet because I needed to see her face to face. I needed to hear it from her one last time, and maybe, just maybe, I needed closure. I was done with the what-ifs and the maybes. I wanted the truth, and I wanted to be done with it. We met at a small, quiet coffee shop, the kind of place where you could sit in a corner and talk without worrying about anyone overhearing. I showed up first, ordered my coffee, and sat at a table in the back trying to calm my nerves. I didn't want to feel anything. I didn't want to feel the anger or the sadness or the regret. I just wanted it to be over. I wanted to hear her say her piece and walk away. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. She had always been the woman who walked into a room and lit it up with her energy, her smile, her presence. But now she looked tired, broken almost. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes were red-rimmed, and there was no trace of the confident woman I had known. She was smaller now. Somehow, her shoulders hunched like she was carrying the weight of the world. She sat down across from me, but I didn't speak. I just stared at her, waiting for her to say something. "I'm sorry," she started, her voice low and shaky. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know how sorry I am. I've been trying to work through everything. I've been going to therapy. I'm trying to figure out why I did what I did." I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. The words I had spent weeks rehearsing in my mind felt useless now. Nothing she could say would take away the pain. "Mark and I, we were just friends at first," she continued, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "But then it became more than that. And I don't know why. I don't know what happened to me. I felt so disconnected. And he made me feel things I thought I was missing." I didn't interrupt. I didn't need to. I'd heard it all before, and I knew how this story ended. "You think I'm supposed to forgive you because you're sorry now?" I asked quietly. "You think that after everything, I'm just supposed to act like it didn't happen?" She shook her head, her eyes pleading with me. "No, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just want you to know that I'm not the person I was. I've been trying to change." I looked at her for a long time, trying to find any trace of the woman I once knew. But I didn't see her. The person sitting across from me wasn't her anymore. She was someone else, someone who had made choices I could never understand. "I can't do this anymore, Emily," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I can't love you like I used to. You've already left me. You made your choice." For a moment, we just sat there in silence. She was crying now, the tears falling freely, but I didn't feel anything. No pity, no anger, just an overwhelming sense of finality. This was the end. The life we'd shared, the love we'd built, it was all gone. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but I didn't answer. I stood up, ready to leave, ready to walk out of the door and into the next chapter of my life. The next chapter where Emily didn't exist anymore. And as I walked out of that coffee shop for the last time, I realized something. It wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new one.